Chapter 13 Connection. Hopefully, you are now more optimistic about your son's academic future than you were when you first picked up this book. You are no longer following the illusory quest for your son to achieve maximum human potential. In fact, the whole idea of imposing this on an adolescent now seems absurd. When you started, however, you were likely troubled by something other than your son's academic underachievement. You felt you were losing him. That wonderful closeness only a parent and child can experience was not just fading into the turmoil of adolescence. It was being fractured by the tension of his poor academic performance. Not only did your son seem to reject your best intentions, dreams, and hopes for him, but he also seemed to disparage some of the values you held dear, the ones that had, until recently, guided your parenting and brought cohesion to your family. How could he not want for himself what you had worked so hard to give him, and which you know every child needs? While I've reassured you that these worries are unfounded, I cannot offer the same solace about the damage that has been done to your relationship. Connection is the third C of motivation, following control and competence, and the paradoxical response is its greatest obstacle. You can't fix the problem without repairing the relationship. The good news is you have already begun. You now appreciate how much your son's thinking has developed. Respect the new opinions he is forming. Recognize his need to separate, and understand his ambivalence about it. You have ended power struggles, learned to communicate better, and set clear limits and boundaries. You now encourage him to be independent and support his autonomy, all toward the goal of competence building. Most important, you have developed the objectivity and empathy to understand that your son is not lazy at all. He is no longer small enough to have you fix everything, but not yet big enough to solve his own problems. Still growing in brain, body, and spirit, following an uneven path of development, unsure of who he is and who he will become, protecting his masculinity, searching for manhood, ambivalent about trying harder and being independent, afraid to fail, worried he is not smart enough, hung up on the idea that others might find this out, unable to tolerate feeling frustrated or anxious, trying to deny that fact that he still depends on you, embroiled in a power struggle with you that gives cover to all of these fears. Just as worried as you are about his future, though he may express it differently. It's now time to make the biggest paradigm shift of all. In order to get your son to opt out, you have to opt out. You have to opt out of saying too much, doing too much, and triggering the paradoxical response. You have to opt out of rescuing him and caring more about your son's academic achievement than he seems to. In other words, you have to redefine your role as a parent, which is not to ensure that your son succeeds at all costs. Rather, your role is to help him open a path of self-knowledge and growth, so that he can discover it by himself. Be the change you want to see. Here's the kicker. The only way for your son to change is if you go first. The ultimate paradigm shift is to redefine your parental role. Daunting? Yes. But I have already given you a roadmap. To make this shift, you'll need to apply the lessons of this book to yourself. Here's how. Being a parent means being competent at feeling incompetent. It comes with the territory. Kids do not always respond to your best intentions, and just because you read this book does not mean your son will go along with all of my recommendations. Parenting requires lots of thinking on your feet. More often than not, you will second-guess yourself and wonder if you've said or done the right thing. Sometimes it will be obvious. Your son will feel calmed by your words or take your advice. More likely, though, it will take days, weeks, or even years before you know the effect of your counsel. One of my favorite quotes about parenting comes from Anthony Wolfe. You need confidence, and not confidence that you are always making the right decision. Nobody can do that. Or that you are always in control of the kid. Nobody can even come close to doing that. Rather, you need the confidence that you are the right person for the job, and that your efforts are definitely not in vain. If I have learned anything as a parent myself, it is not to trust that my guidance will always be correct, or that my children will make the right choices 100% of the time. Instead, what I've learned is to trust the relationship with my kids, that together we can stumble, make mistakes, apologize, and ultimately teach each other things about ourselves that lead to a more meaningful life and a closer connection. Develop a growth mindset about your son. He was not born with a fixed set of strengths and limitations. He will become smarter, faster, and better. You may, however, have to broaden your perspective. Evaluating his progress on a day-to-day basis gives too narrow a view. A different time frame is needed for this. Your son's entire high school experience will be about trial and error, and about testing his limits until he finds they are not set in stone. This is what adolescence is all about. You have to delay gratification. Several years ago, writer Jennifer Senior received much attention for her New York Magazine cover story and book, All Joy and No Fun, wherein she claims that people without children are often happier than their diaper-changing, carpool-driving peers. For starters, adults without children have a lot more free time and money to devote to their own interests. Parenting is not for the faint of heart. It requires hard work and sacrifice, so it has to be a little gratifying. There is nothing like the kisses and cuddles of a small child who only wants to spend time with you. Teenagers, not so much. While you might feel more taken for granted than gratified during these preteen and teen years, it's extremely rewarding to watch your children become more independent and sophisticated. It's not only normal to feel good about yourself when your child does well. It's one of the rewards for all those sleepless nights. Taking a self-esteem boost when your child makes the varsity team, gets a lead in the school play, or looks stunning in the new suit you bought him for the family portrait is fine. The problem arises when you depend on his accomplishments to feel good about yourself as a parent or as a person. This is when you violate his psychological boundaries. Here, delaying gratification means allowing your son to find success on his timetable, and not as a condition of your love. In order to do this, you have to separate your feelings about your son from your feelings about his academic achievement. Focus on the process, not the product. Your child's growth is a process. While there are definitive milestones, these should be used as guides, not as goals. If you focus on the process of his development, you will never run the risk of making your love conditional. More important, the process is where all the important lessons are learned. For example, while you want your son to comply with the curfew you set, it's more important to consider how you explained your rationale to him, heard his feedback, and, if appropriate, made accommodations. If he breaks it, knowing why, enforcing consequences, and seeing if he complies the next time is all a part of the process. Remember the mantra, haste makes waste. The same applies to his grades. They will not improve overnight. It's going to be a process that will help your son develop self-awareness, maturity, and problem-solving skills, all of which will serve him well throughout his life. Develop your own uncertainty tolerance. If you want your son to deal with his ambivalence, anxiety, and doubt, you have to tolerate your own anxiety and doubt about him. Otherwise, you will rush in too quickly. This means you may need to let him fail a little bit and give him the space to have his own worries. If you do all the worrying, he will not have to. A third ingredient. In Chapter 1, page 7, I told you about two essential ingredients to help your son: empathy and objectivity. There is one more: compassion, the concern for another's suffering. Connection cannot exist without it. The Dalai Lama said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." You need to develop compassion, both for your son's struggle as well as for your own. For most parents, self-compassion is the hardest skill to master. You must first be patient with your own growth process as a parent, tolerant of the mistakes you've made and with the uncertainty you feel. Remember, no shame, no blame. Your son's opting out is neither your fault nor solely your problem to solve. You can't fix your son, but you can give him the tools to fix himself. Everyone has a different path to maturity. His is still unfolding. Perhaps the biggest gift you can give yourself and your son is to remember that there is still time. The timeline to prepare him for adulthood, a time when he will be okay without you, is longer than you think. And even though it seems unfathomable, he is already okay with less support than you are giving him. Remember, your son needeth, and really can't, be completely grown up before he leaves for college. What your son needs. Here is what your son needs from you, and he needs it now. Compassionate listening, where he feels truly heard and understood. Remember to be an asker, not a teller. Get him talking about asking open-ended questions and holding back your own opinions and suggestions. Most important, make sure that he feels validated. It is the only way he will trust you and keep on talking. Compassionate limits. Your son most definitely needs limits. Here is one last mantra. Set limits, development happens. Many parents have no problem making threats, but they struggle to enforce them. Setting clear, consistent, and enforceable limits is one of the most compassionate things you can do for a child. He needs to know you are there, hovering in the background, keeping him safe. He needs to trust that those boundaries will be there, but to also feel that every once in a while he can see what the landscape is like beyond them. He needs to be held accountable for his actions, so he can take ownership over his efforts and decisions. Compassionate acceptance for who he is right now, not who you think he could or should be. This also means accepting that parenting has its limitations. You can protect, nurture, and guide your son, but at some point, he has to take control of his own future. The outcome of good parenting is not an 18-year-old who is ready to function on his own. It's an 18-year-old who is ready to embark on a lifelong process of growth and self-improvement. In the words of Washington Post columnist Michael Gerson, writing about his own experience raising a son, parenthood offers many lessons in patience and sacrifice, but ultimately, it is a lesson in humility. The very best thing about your life is a short stage in someone else's story. And it is enough. Compassion will help you understand that your son is not lazy. So much of his problem stems from a fear of seeming stupid or untalented. Compassion will help you understand that the problem lies not solely with your son, but rather with the world that asks so much of a boy who will eventually get there, but needs more time. Compassion will allow you to trust your son enough to grant him the freedom to learn about himself and find his own motivation and drive. Once he does, even if it takes him longer than it takes some of his friends, this motivation will be truly his, and no one can take it from him. Too much emphasis on potential, on a life yet to be fulfilled, keeps us and our kids from living and enjoying the lives we actually have. Perhaps, when it comes to our children, the only potential we should be concerned about is the potential to grow and mature. Then there is this, the joy your son achieves growing toward his potential. That is called happiness, and it will be a wonder for you to behold.